Awesome. Here we are live with Josh Sparks. Super excited to have you on the line today. Obviously from Thrive. Big things happening for Thrive. It's been a journey, I think, for both of us since we first met. I'm just super excited to have you on the line today. So thanks for coming, Josh.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks for making time for this. I know there's a lot of guys within the Real Movement 2 group, that I work with who are excited about me speaking to you because they, a lot of the guys are from Sydney and Brisbane and they've been to your stores and they know that, making fast food accessible, not just to them, but also to their clients, is a big breakthrough, and that trend is super exciting. So those guys are all really looking forward to sort of hearing today and knowing a little bit more about how this has all come about.
Thanks, mate. That's great to hear. We were chatting just before we obviously started recording, and you mentioned there's so much going on in our worlds, and you're not always clear how many people you're truly reaching and who are really understanding what you're trying to do. So it's always nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had an event there in the city, and we went, I think basically everyone from the workshop running out of the Fitness First in town went up to, have lunch at your place both days during the event because it was the fast, healthy, tasty option that everyone was looking for. So, you can't obviously say that about too many places. So it's pretty exciting to have you on today. I guess we're going to get into, Thrive and what that's all about in the event. But, firstly, I'd like to hear a bit about sort of where you came from, what you did before Thrive. Okay,
wow, that is a long and winding journey.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the condensed version. So my background, I'm a passionate foodie in my spare time and always have been, but I haven't worked in the nutrition space or in the hospitality space. Really, I worked in restaurants and cafes as a kid, as I think so many of us did. But professionally, I studied law and worked very briefly with the Mergers and Acquisitions Department of Clayton Utz, so a big law firm in Brisbane. And it just wasn't for me. And I guess I realized very early on that what I wanted was something that was a combination of more entrepreneurial, I guess, business-minded and business challenges, but working with a group of people that I found inspiring, and whether that was creatively or whether it was more recently athletically and intellectually and all that other stuff. I really love the idea of turning up to work each day and getting juiced by the people that you're working with and the clients or the customers that you're coming in contact with.
Yep. And
I just felt that, and this is no disrespect to the legal profession at all, some of my best friends are very successful lawyers, but it just wasn't me. So I found myself looking at, well, what would really kind of fulfill that need? And more or less accidentally, I found my way into the fashion industry, and I joined Sass & Bide as a general manager. Ended up as the CEO of that business, the first CEO of that business, and was there for a very exciting time, 2001 till end of 2006, which was a very high growth time for Australian fashion generally, and Sass & Bide certainly enjoyed its place in that peer group.
Yep.
After that, I moved to New York, became the CEO of Tom Brown New York, which is another high-end label, this time a high-end men's label. And then I moved to Philadelphia and ran the e-commerce business for Anthropology, which is one of the Urban Outfitters brands. Which is the largest business I've ever. It's about a $300 million e-commerce business within a $1.5 billion brand. So I'd done startups.
Yeah.
But I was really curious as to how does the big end of town operate? How do they do it? How do they stay close to the customer when there's so many layers of management? And how do they stay true to their brand vision when there's just so much noise? There's so much going on. So that was a really fantastic couple of years in Philly. So coming out of that, I felt that I'd learned what I wanted to learn in terms of brand building and engaging with customers and all the really cool storytelling and narrative and lifestyle stuff that the fashion brands do so well. I mean, you love fashion or hate fashion, but the one thing that I think most of us can agree on is whether you're talking about Nike in the active outdoor market or you're talking about Urban Outfitters, for example, in the contemporary market, or a Ralph Lauren at the high end, that they've all managed to create this mythology and this narrative around what they do, which is so much more exciting than the product itself. Yep. And so, and don't worry, I am going to wrap this up.
No, I 100% agree. Like it's, the products that most of those companies have, in themselves are not that exciting, but the feel that they've created around what they do is electric, and it makes people want to be a part of it, even though if you actually look at the stuff and you took the label off it, sometimes some of it's junk, some of it's okay. But
I couldn't agree more. And so we can agree or disagree with the idea that sort of material consumption is a good thing for society or a bad thing for society, and I think it's probably balanced somewhere in between, depending on whether you're talking about Apple or you're talking about a women's fashion label. Everyone's got a different opinion.
Yep.
But the point is, that is the world we live in, right? And people have really been taught, whether it was the Nike or the Apple or the Urban or whoever it was, really taught to engage with a brand in they're looking for something bigger than themselves. They're typically looking to service a need that is much deeper than the need for footwear or the need for communication or whatever it is. So I get very excited about that aspect of branding. On the flip side, I've eaten primal paleo for about 6 years. I've been a health and fitness nut my whole life, never anywhere near as successful as you, more kind of a passionate weekend warrior. But I've experimented with nutrition.
I've seen you train, mate. You don't have to be humble.
Seriously, I'm not in your league by a long shot, but I love it. I absolutely love it, and I'm not competitive with anyone but me. So it's all relative for me. It's not about absolute gains that measure up against anyone else. It's about making sure that 41, about to turn 42, I'm continuing to set new benchmarks. So living that way out of work and feeling so incredibly passionate about this real food movement and the slow food movement, which is kind of ironic because we're more of a fast food business. But the idea of taking slow food and making it fast, accessible, affordable, and available to the mainstream, and really creating something that is part of a much bigger conversation. So it's not just about coming to us and buying a grilled chicken bowl on sweet potato mash and seasonal greens, or free range scrambled eggs and free range bacon or whatever for breakfast. The truth is, I think some of what we do is difficult to get anywhere else, but some of what we do you can buy at any cafe or restaurant in Australia. But I think what makes us different, and this is what's most exciting for me, is this reflects the way we live. This reflects the way we believe everyone should live, which is, embracing ancestral health, getting back to the way that we were, we originally moved, the way we originally ate, the way we originally rested and recovered. And if you do that, over time, you will look, feel, and perform as evolution designed you to look, feel, and perform, which is so much better than most of us have expected. Have accepted, I guess, expected and accepted.
Yep.
So, and I know this is right. This is sort of singing off your hymn sheet, but wanting to do it in a way where the average Aussie, whatever that is, and I know that's a pretty broad term, but your average mum and dad out with their kids in a mall on a Saturday morning, looking for something to eat that is healthy and nourishing for them, but also kind of familiar enough and not too weird and exotic, so the kids will love it as well. That to me is the dream, because I think if we go back 20 or 30 years, before we knew everything we know about the food that, say, McDonald's or one of those sort of brands serve, the atmosphere that they created, that family-friendly atmosphere that was fun and friendly and clean and prompt and affordable. If we can draw on the best of that, but then give a nutrition solution that is actually fantastic, that works, heaven forbid, something that's actually real.
Yep. I think that's what you're doing. That's my experience of your brand. I guess from the first time we caught up, it was your first store, I believe, maybe where we met in an MLC, and I was excited to meet you without really knowing too much about your food and whatnot. But the experience that I had there to start with is exactly what you're talking about. Nice and simple, clean, very tasty. It was amazingly fast. Normally you expect to wait, for healthy food. And obviously the methods you've got there of organizing things behind the scene, it was very busy at the back end. You can see guys buzzing around to sort of make it happen. But yeah, you've delivered on a lot of that, which is awesome. I'd like to rewind a little bit. Like, when did you, going through school, did you feel like you were on a path to do something like this at some stage?
It's a really good question. So I was obsessed with businesses, new businesses.
From what age?
Very young. I actually started running fetes outside the front of my parents' house, which I'll tell you a quick story on that actually. When I was about 6, but they evolved, and by the time I was 9, we had this kind of full gambling effectively, where you have to come in and bet money on throwing a ball through a hole or putting a coin on a $10 note at the back of the bottom of a 40-gallon drum. It was very lucrative for a
You found poker machines as a 6-year-old.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I remember my mum actually, I'd gone around and taped up the signs to lampposts, power poles all around our suburb. And it said fun, food, car wash, Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And Mum pulled one down and she came up to me over dinner and said, okay, so I get the fun and I get the car wash. Who's doing the food? Mum, I'm glad you brought that up.
That's awesome.
Pumping out the pikelets.
Yeah. Oh,
so from a very early age,
yeah.
of the idea of creating something that other people felt strongly about, that they were actually prepared to part with their, in those days, pocket money. In these days, their hard-earned dough. That's always been very exciting. And by the end of high school, I'd started a t-shirt company with a friend that was doing Schoolies Week t-shirts for the high schools in Brisbane, where I grew up.
Yep.
And we ended up, registering the business name and, kind of getting a little exclusive on it for a little while. And it was fun, And I think I got, I was bitten very early, and it got into my system. And I think the last 15 years or so in fashion have been really a very slow running process of admitting that I had to do my own thing.
Yep.
As much fun as it was to run other people's brands, and the people I worked with are so clever and so creative, and I was so lucky to work with them. But ultimately, that's their dream.
Yep.
And so you're helping them, bring their dream to life, which is a great feeling. But it's so much greater when you can bring your own dream to life.
Yep.
And in the process, hopefully, help a bunch of people.
Yep. 100%. So when you actually took that leap, were you scared?
Yeah, of course.
Who did you first tell that you're doing Thrive?
Sorry?
Who did you first, tell that this is what you're doing and you're leaving fashion? And
so it's interesting that you asked that, because I was back in Australia and I was consulting to 3 businesses primarily. One in Melbourne, the Just Group, that own Just Jeans and JJ's and Dotty and a whole bunch of other brands, and Gazelle Corporation in Sydney that owns Calvin Klein in Australia and Van Heusen and a bunch of other brands. And then with a mate as well, MJ Bale, which is a fantastic men's brand. And so I was pitching these guys basically, both at Gazelle and at Just Group as potential investors, but also because I really respected them as brand builders and people that really understood marketing and PR. And it was a fantastic response. I mean, they wanted me to continue working for them, but it was a very validating process, because typically they say something like, look, I don't really get this primal paleo thing, and and whatever, but the menu looks delicious. I don't really care what the philosophy is. The menu looks delicious, and if you can deliver it at this price point with this branding, then I'd probably give it a shot. Yep. So that was very encouraging. But at the same time, I'd just been divorced, and so financially it was as anyone who's been divorced will tell you, it's a very challenging time. And there's money tied up, and there's a lot less money per se than there was previously. And so it was I put everything on the line, basically, every last dollar of my life savings, and
burn the bridges.
Sorry,
you burned the bridges a bit. You made the
bridges.
Commitments and
exactly. Maxed out the credit cards, put every last dollar in there, put the super in there, put everything in there. So at that point you're absolutely right. It is about burning bridges, burning boats, whatever analogy you want to use. There is absolutely no going back. And if does that mean that we can't fail? No, of course not. The stats against us are pretty daunting.
I don't even know those stats.
Don't ask.
Probably better not to know.
But the point is that if you're going to go down, I want to go down all in.
Yep.
And that may be better than anything else personifies whether you're an entrepreneur or not.
Yep.
If you're not prepared to put every last dollar into it, blood, sweat and tears, reputation, every contact, every family and friend has been roped in to help in some way, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. It's either not the right idea, you're the right person, but it's not the right idea, or you should be working for someone else, and the risk profile is not there, and that's cool. That's okay. But what I discovered really through this process is that I love it. And we have some good weeks and we have some bad weeks, and we have good months and bad months. And there's this, as you grow a business like ours, it's, $500,000 out the door every time you open a new store. And, you don't get that back for a while. And when you're doing 2 or 3 stores in a row, it's pretty scary. And you're juggling banks, and you're juggling investors, and, you're sort of praying that this idea of, ancestral health-based eating is going to catch fire in what is still often a very naive market.
Yeah. So how do you feel when you see stuff come up like, 2014 worst diets? I must have seen about 20 different places that paleo is like the worst diet of 2014, even though it's the ancestral diet of all history, but it's somehow in 2014 it's horrendous. How does that make you feel when that's your livelihood?
It's funny though, isn't it? I mean, I worked brilliantly for 2 million years, but somehow it doesn't work anymore. Look, I think it's a really good question. I think that what people are responding to is less the substance of the argument and more the style in which it's being made.
Yep. And
I think in Australia we've had some very vocal proponents for this way of life that have a style that not everyone loves.
Yep.
And that's okay. It clearly works for them in the media or and I'm not talking about any one person either. There's 2 or 3 people that come to mind immediately that have done a fantastic job in stirring the pot.
Yep.
And you want to do that when you're in the media, or if you're selling books, or you're trying to get a TV deal or whatever, because you want people to love or hate you. And so I think there's been a degree of success around that. So the style of the argument, I think, is conflated with the true substance. Once people really dig under the surface, certainly once they dig under the surface and they do the reading and they check out the research, it gets pretty compelling.
Yeah.
But of course, as we all know, it's great that it worked for Joe Blogg in his research clinic in Colorado. How's it going to, what's it doing for me, baby? So when you actually go and try it, and 30 days later, the old Rob Wolf line, 30 days later, you look, feel, and perform substantially better than you did before.
Yep.
That's when it really catches. And then I think the argument of whether, I can't even remember what magazine printed that, but whether, call it XYZ magazine says that what we're doing is crazy. That's fine with me when I have, between 600 and 900 customers a day per store telling me that what we do really works.
Yeah.
So, I don't want the love of the magazine world. That's
yeah, exactly. You need customers, people who want the food.
And the people who are prepared, who are curious enough and who are committed enough to come and give us a try. Like, I want to reward them with an amazing experience and great food. And if that means that some journalists think that we're fringy or weird or,
yeah,
you can't please everyone, right?
No. So yeah, well, have you copped that criticism personally at all, or has anyone singled out your brand there?
Personally, absolutely. The brand all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know what social media is like, right?
Yeah.
There's some wonderful aspects of it, and we were talking just before we came on air about how successful we've been at selling tickets through social media. So there's clearly a very passionate, very loyal, very committed community that we've created, that you've created, that various people in this area have created. On the flip side, it's anonymous. So if you want to say something nasty, and let's face it, lots of people like saying nasty things, then the perfect place to do it with no risk of any kind of comeback whatsoever is social media. So we get our fair share of those guys and girls, and I don't even know if they're guys and girls because they're anonymous.
Yeah.
At the store, I do sometimes get, particularly, I still do a front of house shift at least twice a week because just to speak to customers and hear what they think.
Like all the McDonald's owners.
And I do cop a little friction there sometimes as well. Typically, it's where someone who loves us has brought a friend who's skeptical.
Yeah.
So the one who loves us going, it's okay, it looks confusing, but it's not. And you just choose a base, and you choose a protein, you choose a side, blah blah blah. And then I'll get the look. What is this all about anyway? And isn't this just a fad? And isn't this just a marketing stunt? And and so I have to. If I've got the time, if they're not in a rush and I'm not in a rush, I'll talk them through the fact that I've been living this way for 6 years. It's not a fad, and it's based on a diet that's 2 million years old, and so on and so forth. But typically, what I'll say is, look, if you really don't believe a single word I say, I'll tell you what I'll do. You eat with us for 30 days, 5 days a week, for lunch every day. At the end of those 30 days, if you don't look, feel, and perform better, and I prefer that you do a blood panel before you start and when you finish. But if you don't, that's okay. I can live with that. If you don't look, feel, and perform better, and if you don't want to come back to us the following Monday, then I'll refund you for every meal you purchased. And no one's ever taken me up on that.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will.
Yeah.
Will now.
Well, you have had people eat in there really regularly with some of your challenges, though, haven't you? To sort of put that to the test. It's kind of the reverse of the old McDonald's challenge in that documentary. That you
The opposite of supersizing.
exactly. So yeah, you've had some great results with people doing that.
And we have some fantastic results, and we're just about a couple of months away from launching a new challenge that I think is going to be really cool. It's going to involve more measurements and more objective measures of success rather than just a change in body weight.
Yep.
So I've always had a problem with. I just think it's not a proxy for very much.
No, especially if people are adding some resistance training to what they do as well, and you're kind of discouraging them from doing that if you're going to just measure scale weight.
Exactly. And those challenges that are out there that dominate the market at the moment, I think they've done a great job of making people aware how quickly they can make a change in their lives and a dramatic change. But I think there's a little disservice in dumbing it down to a body weight measure.
Yeah.
So we're working on a couple of ideas. But the other thing is, I think it's okay as well that occasionally you get a non-responder.
Yep.
And I'm sure you found this as well.
Sure.
And we have had a couple of people that just doesn't seem to agree with. And we try to dive into that to the extent we can. Is it because they're responding with us, but then they go home and kind of go in a completely different direction?
Yeah.
Are they really being accurate in their workout log and in their
Yeah. Do they not sleep? Are they on prescription meds? There's so many things that can interfere with the results that you're getting. And food is such an important piece of the puzzle, but it's definitely not the only one. So, you wouldn't want to hang yourself based on one or two people who are not getting the results that that the majority are getting. What about with your own food? You spoke a bit about being a real fitness enthusiast and loving this stuff. Being the base of sort of why you did it. Are you sort of low carb, or do you go? How do you sort of cycle your macronutrients, your portions, your meal timings? What's food like for you?
So it's a really good question, and I do have the luxury of eating at Thrive every day, so it's not hard for me to get kind of whatever I'm looking for. So therefore, I can sort of plan it.
Yeah.
Than perhaps many people eating out once a day. It's probably a bit harder. But to answer your question, I'm sort of cyclic low carb.
Yep.
I tend to go relatively low carb, very low carb, except post workout. I'm fine training in a ketogenic state now.
Yep.
I'm not too bothered by it. Having said that, I'm not doing like some of the stuff that you do. I would probably struggle with because I'm not always topped off from a glycogen perspective, depending on how heavily I did carb reload.
Yep.
I workout. In theory, I should be, but in practice, it doesn't seem to always be that way. But these days, I'm very much looking for sort of the minimum effective dose. So whether it's eating or whether it's training, whatever it is, I'm so time, as we all are, I'm so time poor. There's so much going on. So my eating kind of reflects that as well. And what I find is that I don't always eat breakfast, and it's not because I'm intermittent fasting deliberately. It's more that if I'm not hungry, I won't eat.
Yep.
And that often will get me through till 11. It doesn't always get me through to 12 or 1.
Yep.
I tend to start the day with a black coffee, which is generally my caffeine for the day.
Yep.
If I'm jet lagged or something, I might have a second, but generally it's one cup of strong coffee. For lunch, I try to do if it's not post workout, so this is a low carb day, I'd have it on greens or baby spinach. I have some sort of grilled protein, so our salmon or our chicken or beef or whatever.
Yep.
And then I'd spec it up with some avocado and some broccoli. And that's generally about it for lunch.
Yep.
And then for dinner, I'm kind of doing it's a permutation on the same thing. So we might have, if I'm working from home or if I've been in the house in mid-morning and I've ducked away, I'll often put something into slow cook. So you'll get home and there's a big hunk of lamb or pork or whatever that's been cooking for 6 hours on a low temp. I love tearing into that stuff with just a big pile of veggies or a big salad, maybe a bit of both.
Yep.
I don't have a lot of fruit, and I love smoothies, but I find that I don't really need them. I don't think.
Yep.
I don't mind them post workout, but I'm not. We have great smoothies at Thrive, so I have to be a little bit careful.
No, there's plenty of people who testify to that. It's personal preference, isn't it?
I love food.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy smoothie once in a while, but I like real food more than anything else. And whether it's prepared for me at Thrive or I'm preparing it at home, I'm looking for you know, is that old cliche. We want about 2/3 of the plate being salad or veggies with as much colour as possible.
Yep.
I like to do a mix of raw, mix of steamed, baked, stir fry, like just mix it up from
Yep.
a day-to-day basis.
Have you done any ketone testing with your?
You know, I actually, it's funny you asked. I got the Dave Asprey does that kind of mystery gift box that you get once a month, and Steph, my partner, has signed up for it, and the last box turned up with a little box of, you know, ketone testing strips.
Okay, cool.
You've done it, obviously.
Yeah, my brother bought the one that's kind of like a breathalyzer, but instead of alcohol, it's reading the ketone bodies. So yeah, I've been using that lately, and I've actually been giving it a try because he did it for a little while there, and well, he's been doing it and really enjoying it. So yeah, he sort of gave me his thing to test, and yeah, I've been sitting in the moderate zone most of the time for the last sort of 10 days. I haven't actually had a refeed at all since I've started doing it. So yeah, probably under 30 grams of carbs most days. Maybe up to 50 at the most. So just as an experiment, but I think it really, I'm really much better with lower carbs. I've had some of the symptoms of insulin fluctuation be a real factor for me. So it's really nice to play around with. I'm not sure exactly what I'll settle, how cyclical I'll go with the carbs, but
it's fun to play with. To your point, yeah. And I think I'm not sure if you found this. Do you find that well, certainly with intermittent fasting, but even with low carb, that your energy actually goes up?
Yeah.
And you feel clearer and
Oh,
sharper?
I had full on days. We just had an internship here, so we had 5 guys in here just going full on. Morning session, afternoon session, and lectures in between. Masterminding sessions at night. Just pretty much non-stop, like juggling in our rest. So it's just like the brain's just been going, the whole time. And yeah, getting through that with sometimes their baby, not having the best sleeps. I've got little Maya's, it's just gone 10 months. So, some of the nights, some nights she's happier than others. And yeah, I feel like real clarity, good energy, beyond what would be normal for me. I guess it's just a matter of how long that sort of goes for. Some people talk about after doing it for months on end with high intensity training that they really feel the carbs sort of add back some energy. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, exactly. We'll keep you posted because I'm very interested. I haven't done extended ketogenic. I've always done the cyclic thing. So I'd be really interested to hear how you go.
I'm definitely dropping a little bit of fat as well. My wife's telling me.
Instagram.
Yeah, so I think I really like the fats as well. Some people feel like they don't digest fats well, but I feel good with good amounts of fats. So yeah, it's been really interesting. Talk to us about living in the US and as a foodie, and what was that a big part of the motivation to solve the problem?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I completely failed to mention it earlier. But working in the States, particularly with Urban, I was doing a lot of travel for those guys. So they're based in Philly, but they've got stores all over the US. So I was traveling to different areas and areas where I hadn't spent a lot of time, like Atlanta and Denver, and so these cities that I just hadn't really spent a lot of time in. And typically my job was to go and spend time with the stores that either represented us or with our own stores. And often they were in malls, and sometimes they were in high traffic retail areas.
Yeah.
But either way, I'd be running around between meetings and trying to find something to eat. And having gone paleo whenever it was, 2008 I think, 2008? There or thereabouts, and being really strict with it from 2010 forward.
Yep.
It was almost impossible to find something to eat, as you know.
Yep.
And even if you think, okay, it's okay, I'm going to grab some nuts and some beef jerky. Well, the beef jerky's full of sugar and soy and
MSG.
The nuts are roasted and salted and completely destroyed. And so it really did become a little bit of a labour of love to try to find something to eat each day that wasn't going to leave me feeling bloated and sluggish and low energy for the rest of the afternoon. And it actually got to the point where I regularly didn't eat lunch, but not in a healthy way that we would now consider skipping a meal completely acceptable because we're ketogenic adapted, we're fat adapted.
Yeah.
Back then I wasn't fat adapted because I was still eating more carbs. I was still doing a lot of endurance training.
Yep.
And I wasn't educated enough at that point to know that I could still do endurance training without the carbs. And they were good carbs, safe carbs, but I was still on a little bit of a carb roller coaster. So I think the further I got into it from a personal perspective, the more I learned, and the more I was out in these monstrous shopping malls with everything you could ever imagine wanting to buy, except for this particular kind of eating. Like you can get anything in those malls.
Yeah.
But you couldn't get primal, paleo, ancestral health focused food, and it was just a bit of a light bulb. I'm like, okay, this kind of altar to materialism, where there is literally nothing you cannot buy in the four walls of this world, apart from one thing I want,
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a light bulb moment. But then I had to, and I'm sure you're familiar with this as well. Then I had to check myself and recheck myself to kind of go, do I really want to do this?
Yeah.
Am I actually solving? Is this an elegant solution in search of a problem, or is there a genuine problem that I'm going to solve?
Yep.
And getting out of your own head and trying to differentiate between, well, this is right for me, but is it right for sufficient numbers of others to support a business and rent and labour and
Yep.
So it took a while. I was a bit slow, Keegan. It took me a little while.
Well, you're setting a trend and you're breaking into a market that's only just starting to exist. So it's it's smart that you were sort of asking yourself those questions, because even though it's a great concept, you still need people through the front door. That's bottom line.
Having done retail for 15 years, that first day never gets any easier.
Yeah. Is anyone coming? Yeah, I did street selling for a while for Amnesty International. It's probably a bit of a feeling like that, where you're just out there all day and don't know whether it's going to, achieve anything, or it's a tough feeling.
It's a tough gig, man.
Yeah. So then you made the step, and now you've got these stores. How many stores are we up to now on the?
We've got 5 now. The 6th will open in about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
6 weeks. That's at the Macquarie Centre outside of Sydney, or just in the Sydney suburbs.
Yeah.
We've got 3 lined up for next year.
Yep.
1 in Melbourne, 2 in Sydney. We're looking for another site in Brisbane. I think that for the second half of this year, if we don't do another store, that's completely fine with me.
Yep.
Because we're at that point now where we kind of have to upgrade our systems and our IT, and it's all terribly boring. But if you don't get it right at 5 or 6 stores, you really can't think about 15 or 20. You'll fall over.
Yep.
So we just want to bed down some systems, really invest in training our people. We've got a big primal education push at the moment internally, where I'm subsidising all staff actually to be primally educated on the. So we give them the books for free, but then if they read all the books and they provide me with a book review on every single book, and it looks like they've actually tried, then I'll pay for them to do the Mark Sisson's primal expert certification.
Awesome.
So we're just trying to get everyone just at that next level.
That's an amazing thing, to do for your staff, and to help them towards. I'm sure a lot of them have hopes and dreams. Actually, one of your staff members is in my my mastermind group, and it's been awesome actually to see him sort of, he's coming up with his own stuff of what he wants to do, but he actually really loves that he works, for you and your company. And I think seeing this will be awesome for him as well, to be able to sort of, identify a little bit more with your brand. And you probably have a lot more people wanting to come work for you now after you said about your promise for education. Yeah.
I'd be very happy to see regimens.
I always check in with the staff actually when I go and buy something at your stores, and generally they are much happier than people who are at other retail stores or places, it's a cool thing as well, that it does have that vibe that you're trying to create.
That's great. Look, we really try to focus on conveying kind of, if you're coming to somewhere hoping to get healthier and more energetic and be able to really put your foot to the floor in terms of living your life to your fullest potential, then the last thing you want to do is get this kind of monotone, going through the motions, bored out of their skull kind of service.
Yeah.
So I'm delighted to hear that you've had a good experience.
And do they eat much of the food there? I won't mention Michael Lane's name because I know I've heard a few stories, but do the staff get to eat any food, or?
They sure do. They eat out of house and home.
I've heard a couple of stories actually, but yeah.
Honestly, the more they love it,
Yeah,
the more they're conveying it to friends, family, and customers. So
Yeah.
It's a virtuous circle.
Yeah.
We haven't had to cut anyone off yet.
Yeah, no, I think he's brought in a lot of business because his brother works at the Roosters, and he's a massive fan, and we've brought a few people in there, so hopefully it works out in the positive for you. We definitely don't want to put you out of business, mate. Can you tell us a bit more about your training? What do you like? You're talking about a few goals there. What have you been working on?
So basically, I periodize my training, as I'm sure all your listeners are very familiar with. I break it up generally into 8-week blocks, sometimes shorter. Like mobility, I tend to only do for 4 or 6 weeks.
Yep.
Before I sort of get back into some strength stuff. At the moment, I'm doing stuff that's based on Dan John's book, Easy Strength.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah, I've done some of the challenges out of that.
It's fun.
Yeah, I did the 40-day, the 40-session challenge. I'm not sure if you're on that one, but yeah.
Not yet, and it sounds fun.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, cool. So what? Yeah.
It's more about. I work with Tony Gonzalez, who's a trainer who works at One Martin Place in Sydney. He's fantastic.
Yep.
On Wednesday, I only train twice a week.
Yep.
So again, it's sort of minimum effective dose stuff. I do Tony on Wednesdays, and then I have a gym in my garage, or what's meant to be a garage, but is currently a gym downstairs. And I train with a group of guys, just a bunch of mates, basically on Sunday. We call it church. I guess that's a bit sacrilegious. Comes over on Sunday morning, we go and train.
Awesome.
And it's fun because you get a little bit of.
Yeah, that community training is amazing.
It is. Well, exactly. You're the expert. It's just much more fun coming together.
Yeah.
So because I only train twice a week, I'm really steering the ship through nutrition these days. But I've got rather than through training.
Yeah.
But I've also got a ton of time to recover. So even at my age, at 41, which still feels incredibly young to me, by the way, but it's supposedly it's meant to be middle aged. I can still train relatively hard, and so I'm not massively strong or anything. I only weigh 72 kilos, but to deadlift 185 or 190 and to squat, what do I do, about 165 and about 115 on the bench. Although I think I'll probably struggle to do that today, but all of those are relatively recent benchmarks, and I feel like I'm still getting stronger. But using the Easy Strength system, well, you're very familiar with it. You're meant to leave the gym feeling like you could do more.
Yep.
And for someone like me, that's a huge challenge, because I sort of think if I'm not wasted walking out of the gym, then I haven't trained hard enough. But of course, that's not right.
Yeah.
So the other thing I throw into the mix is sprints. So 2 strength sessions, 1 sprint session a week. But the sprint session is very brief.
Yep.
You're talking kind of 10 to 15 minutes, including warm up and cool down. And then the rest of the time, man, it's just fun stuff. It's going for a walk with the kids. It's paddleboarding down at Manly, swimming in the harbour in the ocean. So, pretty low level kind of 55 to 75% max heart rate type stuff, but trying to do a lot of that.
Yep.
And then leading the intense stuff to these concentrated 45-minute sessions, half hour, 45 minutes, twice a week.
Yeah, perfect. It fits your lifestyle.
Exactly. And and the truth is that if I had a little more time, I would definitely train more regularly. Not because I think you have to.
Yeah.
I think you can train once a week and still progress if you do it right. But just because I love it.
Yeah.
I kind of miss it.
Yeah.
But that's just where I'm at with the business and being a single dad and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I guess if we look at it, a bit in that sort of bigger picture, where's this headed? Can you tell us a bit about the future of Thrive?
Very good question. And hopefully, it is so hot and humid in Sydney today.
Yeah, it's steamy as anything here as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's jealous, mate. I wouldn't be worried about it.
It's not blurbs, I promise.
Yeah.
So, where's it heading, mate? Very good question. Assuming we're not within that 96% or whatever that failed, assuming we're in the 4%.
You weren't going to tell us those numbers, mate.
I'm sorry. Assuming we're in that lucky 4%, then, to the extent that we're in control of our destiny, and I think some of it is up to us and some of it is up to the broader community helping us educate the mainstream. So,
Yep.
And by that I mean, if I had to go out and pick sites today that I felt would work today with the level of understanding and awareness in the mainstream market that there is in, early 2015, then I would probably tap out at 15 to 20 sites in the whole of Australia.
Unfortunately.
However, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said 5.
Yep.
So it's already getting bigger.
Yep.
And I think so. Part of it's up to us because obviously it's our job to educate people about the Thrive brand.
Yep.
But in terms of the broader ancestral health movement, incorporating what you do, what Mark Sisson does, what Rob Wolf's talking about, that as a community we can achieve so much more together.
100%.
And we all have slightly different perspectives, right? But you're talking about the last couple of percent.
Yeah.
By by far the bulk of what I'm talking about every day from a nutrition perspective, I'm guessing, mirrors what you're talking about from a holistic lifestyle.
Yeah,
training, diet, everything.
Yeah, and the majority of the population, unfortunately, if they're following the default pattern of what they've been instructed to eat, or what their parents ate, then they're so far away from the mark that what you're doing, what I'm doing, is practically identical when we make a comparison to what I ate growing up, or the standard sort of diet that most people are suffering through, basically. So I really believe in the power of this community, and that's why I like doing these podcasts, and I promote a lot of the businesses, the guys that that I'm associated with, just because I do feel that it is a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. Like, the bigger you are, the bigger I'll be, and with all these other people in the community, it's just great to see people who are having success in it, because it proves that possibility is there, that market's there, and the fact that it has to grow pretty much organically, that it doesn't really get too much mainstream support, and there's kind of some commercial interests that would maybe rather not see it proceed. That makes it even more exciting to sort of knit together as a community and help each other out and make a change.
I totally agree, and I think for as long as the big agricultural companies, the major processed food companies, and the soft drink industry are combined they're the biggest advertisers in Australia, full stop. So for as long as that's the case, we've got to be realistic that even believing 100% in the integrity of journalists, there is pressure on them not to run stories about how bad their advertisers' products are. I mean, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just business.
Yeah.
And I think that the sooner we kind of get our heads around that and stop trying to please everyone in the mainstream media, and instead focus on touching individual lives and transforming individual lives through what you do and what we play a small part in and what others are doing, then I think we kind of reset the conversation. It's not about the corporations. It's not about the big end of town. It's about individuals taking control of their destiny. And as a libertarian, I find that incredibly exciting. Don't rely on the nanny state, and don't rely on truth in advertising. Do your own research, take control of your own life, and make a couple of simple changes, and you're a different person.
100%. It's great that you've had that experience yourself, to be able to kind of share. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about, what motivated that change in you and what it's kind of meant to you to do what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's got a slightly different story in terms of how they first discovered ancestral health, to use the broadest term.
Yep.
For me, I wasn't, and we hear most regularly, because the media is obsessed with before and after photos, we hear most regularly about people that came to it through the prism of I'm obese, or I have type 2 diabetes, or whatever, I'm overweight, and I need to lose weight, which is, as we both know, a massive simplification of the benefits of this lifestyle.
Yep.
That aside, I didn't put on tons of weight, but I got a bit pudgy. and much more importantly to me, because I've got an ego, we've all got egos, but much more important about not sort of having a six-pack anymore, was that I just didn't feel good, and I was finding that it wasn't just lethargy or an afternoon energy crash, but I wasn't making decisions as well as I was making decisions before. I just wasn't thinking as clearly.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the business of digging ditches or painting houses or sculpting marble. Everything I do comes from up here, and this idea that it was impacting my cognitive ability, which obviously a ton of research now backs up.
Yep.
The fact that kind of overindulging in sugars and carbs was affecting the way that I thought, and ultimately could affect my very livelihood and ability. That was kind of a bit of a stunning revelation for me.
Yeah.
So, do we want to be leaner and stronger and tough? Like, of course, that's the way humans were designed. We want to be as competitive athletically as we possibly can be, because that was a key to our survival. But also for me, as we've evolved and where we stand today, there is nothing scarier to me than cognitive decline. And if systemic inflammation has now been causally linked to the scariest of the cognitive degeneration diseases, then for me that's a no-brainer. I mean, the six-pack's a bonus. The fact that you can throw some weight around, that's a bonus.
Yeah. I think that's a big, in this culture where everything's so obsessed with visual, you know, the Facebook and Instagram, you know, that what's this image tell me, you know, it's all about looks and people are counting macros and whatnot and, you know, just saying it's only calories that count. But yeah, you can have a six pack, but, you know, we're talking about immune function, we're talking cognitive function, we're talking joint health, you know, we're talking about so much more than, you know, just performance and just six packs, you know. So that's, yeah, it's good for you to, you know, to reinforce that message to anyone who's you know, listening to this one is awesome.
Actually, and just on that,
yeah,
I think of the physical manifestations of health as a side effect.
Yep.
Like they're not the primary effect. What you see visually reflects what's going on internally, obviously. And you know, we've known for a long time that if it's impacting one part of your body, it's impacting the entire body. Even though Western medicine wants to compartmentalize it, you know, it's one system. So I think it's great that we get these visual cues for progress and success, but ultimately that's what they are. For me, they're indicia of how successful you are on making yourself so much healthier inside and out. So yeah, I think the six pack and stuff is a side effect.
Yep. Yeah, it's good that you've got one though. I'm sure you're happy with it. Well, so I guess a lot of people who listen to this will probably be personal trainers and people who are running their own businesses, you know, maybe not thinking on quite the scale that you are. But yeah, can you talk a bit about, you know, what advice you have for young guys out there who do have that entrepreneurial urge, and how can they make this happen, and how big should they be thinking?
That's a great question. I think, well, first of all, I'll answer the second part of your question first. I think that the bigger the dream, the more exciting it is. And the more exciting it is, the more engaged you're going to be, and the more engaged potential employees are going to be, and clients are going to be. And I would say go big. You know, the old cliche, go big or go home. And that doesn't necessarily mean financially big either. You know, it really just means about your dream could be to touch 100,000 people, or to write a blog that move people to participate in some kind of challenge 10,000 times over. Like, it doesn't have to be about money.
Yep.
And in fact, this is probably a good segue. The greatest success that I've ever had in business was when I stopped focusing on financial outcomes.
Yep.
And just focused on doing something that was authentic, and that came from a place of genuine integrity, and was representative of the brand promise that we were making. So whatever brand that happened to be, you know, and that's effectively what a brand is, right? And whether you're a personal trainer and your brand is, you know, Manly Strength Coach, or you're a computer maker and your brand is Apple, that people will start to associate a set of promises, a set of expectations of a better life with that brand.
Yep.
So I think that, you know, I'd say go big. I'd say really think about your personal brand and what promise is it that you're making to your customers. The best brands really appeal to emotional needs, not financial needs or material needs. As a personal trainer or a nutritionist or someone working in this space, you are appealing to emotional needs almost by default, but you need to get laser sharp and focused on exactly what it is you're promising, and then make sure that everything you do is true to that. Which sounds obvious, but there's often a big disconnect between brand promise and reality, as we know. I also think probably that the other piece of advice I give is that if you're working in a space where the de facto business model, the standard business model, is that you're paid by the hour.
Yep.
You have to think about ways that you can make money while you're sleeping.
Yep.
So whether that's it's all about the creation of intellectual property, and whether that's a blog, a book, a system, a series of YouTube clips, you know, whatever it is, and baby steps, right? Like you get there over time.
Yep.
But start to think about, how do I capture what I'm doing uniquely and make it available to people when I'm not standing in front of them charging $100 or $150 an hour, but I can charge less. But it's digital distribution. There's no incremental cost. If I sell one copy or 500 copies, it's cost me the same amount, more or less. And I don't need any more hours in the day.
Yep.
So I think, I could go on for hours on this, but I think, to answer your specific questions, I think the bigger the dream, the greater the chance that you will stick with it through the highs and lows of the startup phase, which are frankly pretty brutal. The chances are you'll attract better employees and more engaged customers.
Yep.
really, really focus in on what you're communicating, what promise you're making with your brand, and then build products and services that genuinely honor that promise. And then throughout the process, try to, if your first product or your first service is an hourly service, think of your second product. So the first is all about hearts and minds. The second is about exploiting this intellectual property that you've worked so hard to develop, but to exploit it in a way that doesn't rely on you being present, for 24 hours, 7 days a week, because it's just not sustainable. And even if you were capable of doing 24/7, that'd be it. You'd be tapped out. You can't get any more time.
Yep. Great advice. And we might have to get you on again at some stage to do a real business mastermind, now that we've heard your story. And, that was, I guess, how we met. You were giving me some real advice on how to get my brand up and running to be able to try and make a bigger difference outside of working with NRL players. I've always wanted to sort of make an impact outside of that, and I'm fortunate enough now to be working full time in my own business and getting it off the ground, and hopefully going to be one of that 4% that you're talking about. But yeah, it's I really am grateful for the interest you had and the faith you sort of had in what I was trying to do at that stage, and ongoing. To be part of this event with Mark Sisson is just a massive honor, and I'm so excited to be there with all these amazing people who I sort of read their books and seen their stuff online. So to be a part of that group is really a dream come true, and something I probably thought was impossible even 2 years ago. So
it's, first of all, thank you so much for saying that. My absolute pleasure. I think what you've done already has so far exceeded what we were originally brainstorming that my original advice is completely you just shot straight past that. So it's incredibly nice of you to say that. But in terms of the peer group that you're a part of now, Keegan, what's really interesting is that when I mentioned this before we went on air, when I was talking to Mark mentioned you. So you start to, it's probably difficult for you to see it, and this is probably important for your listeners to hear as well, that you can really kind of do your own thing, and if you're true to yourself and you're true to the promise that you're making your clients, then you start to get noticed, not just in that community and not just in the broader Australian ancestral health community, but you have these international ancestral health celebrities that are mentioning your name, and I think it's a little ego flattery, but it's much more than that. It means you've reached so much broader than you could have imagined. And it's like compound interest, right? You just bank it. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Provided that you continue to do what you're doing, you're building on such a substantial foundation that you really can build a skyscraper. And that's incredibly exciting.
Super exciting. And hopefully we'll get the chance to have a bit of a chat while I'm down in Sydney for the event. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do you want to just mention a little bit about the event? Are you still selling places, or is it done, sold out?
We've got just a few one-day places left.
Okay.
But mate, we could always squeeze one of your listeners in, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It is late notice, but there are still tickets.
Yeah, there's a few coming, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find all the details on thrive.me, thrive.me.
Yep.
It's going to be a fantastic 3 days. Obviously, you know all about it, Keegan. It is the world's leading lights within the ancestral health movement, all convening in Manly for 3 days of kind of inspiration and education, but also a ton of fun. So I can't wait for it. It's my dream weekend. Hopefully everyone else loves it too. Yeah,
no, it's awesome. I'm pumped. I'm heading down tomorrow with my wife and baby. So we're super excited for it. Last question. What does the world look like 10 years from now? Your world.
The world.
Both. They're connected.
Because I like my little bubble. But,
your bubble's expanding rapidly, so you might have a bigger answer than some people.
It's a really interesting question, and there's a fantastic book called The Irrational Optimist, which I highly recommend, because I find that the media is so focused on everything that is terribly wrong with the world that we live in, and how so many things are just about to explode into some new unimaginable apocalypse, that it's easy to forget that this is the very best time to be alive in the history of man. We have, so at least in this country and in the countries where most of your listeners are based, I'm sure, we're incredibly lucky. So I hope, my hope is that within our sphere, this way of eating, moving, resting, recovering, whatever you want to call it, this ancestral health movement really starts to tip into the mainstream, because I think from a societal perspective, it will preserve our ability to fund medical care for those who truly need it. You know, it will prevent the bankruptcy of Medicare. But much more importantly to individual lives, they're just going to have more fulfilling, fuller, happier lives. So that's within our space. But I think on an international basis, I'm a bit old-fashioned, mate. I just hope that democracy and free speech and freedom of assembly and the ability to be your own person and live your own life with this one life that we get, I just hope that those who don't currently enjoy that, you know, over the next 10 years, hopefully we see some progress towards them enjoying that. Actually, hopefully they get there. Let's not ask for progress. Let's give this kind of life, that the life that we sometimes take for granted, in Australia or the US or the UK.
Yep.
Let's give that to as many people as we can. That's not a religious argument, by the way, either. It's not a cultural argument either. It's just about freedom.
Yep. And health is a great basis for freedom, isn't it? You know, that's really where it can start.
You can't be truly free.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, if you're hooked up to a machine, or you're on a steady supply of prescription meds, or you've got to see your doctor every 4 weeks for bloods or whatever, and that's preventable. I mean, if it's not preventable and you just, you know, lucked out on the genetic lottery, then that is a tragedy, and that's a risk for all of us. And, you know, who knows, it may happen to some of us, it may not. But if that's preventable, then that's not freedom. And, you know, I couldn't agree more. You have to take control of your health and your wellness to be able to live the best life for yourself, and to be able to give the most to your family, community, business, whatever it is in church, whatever it is you're interested in.
Great note to finish on. Really, thank you so much for your time. I wanted to do this for a long time, so it's great to get you on, and I'm really excited for the weekend. Maybe we'll be able to grab you for a couple of minutes. If there's follow-up questions that people have from this, they can post comments. Please share this around to your friends as well, because what Josh is doing is something amazing, and more brand awareness around this is great for everyone, whether you're a PT or a health practitioner or wherever you sit. Thanks a lot, Josh, and looking forward to seeing you on the weekend.
Pleasure, Keegan. Can't wait to see you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers, mate.